This is La Noche in the Americas. As day breaks in Europe and evening falls in Asia, the night sets over the American continent while the morning and afternoon pass in the rest of the world. La Noche, under the direction of Claudia Gurisati.
He sowed fear and death in Colombia through extortions, massacres, forced disappearances, and bloody terrorist attacks. He planned mass kidnappings that plunged an entire country into pain and anxiety.
When I turned 11, the Paisa started abusing me. He took me once supposedly to help some people, and out there he abused me. It was a rape. My first sexual experience was a rape.
Thanks to the signing of the peace agreement, the judicial processes and arrest warrants against him were suspended, and although he has already received these benefits, to this day he has not fulfilled his commitments to the special jurisdiction for peace.
Thus, the chamber concludes that first, Mr. Hernán Darío Velásquez Aldariaga failed to meet the essential prior condition of contributing to the truth and reparation of the victims, as he did not appear for any of the summons issued by the jurisdiction so far.
Today on the program La Noche on NTN 24, the channel for the Americas, the protagonists of the news speak out. 3 victims of Hernán Darío Velásquez, alias El Paisa, analyze the actions and decisions made by the Special Jurisdiction for Peace regarding his repeated non-compliance. Yes. From 3 different points of view, they answer whether it is legitimate or not for this FARC leader to continue receiving the criminal benefits of the peace agreement without having contributed to guaranteeing and satisfying the rights of those who were victims of his crimes.
La Noche begins under the direction of Claudia Gurisati.
La Noche turns on the lights so you can see the key point of the news. I am Claudia Gurisati. Welcome.
Good evening.
Very good evening, Claudia.
Well, the news is as follows. The Special Jurisdiction for Peace decided today to order the capture of Hernán Darío Velásquez Aldariaga, better known as alias El Paisa. The Truth and Reparation Recognition Chamber proceeded to decree the loss of conditional freedom for the man considered one of the most bloodthirsty and barbaric leaders of the FARC.
Claudia, the news, the reasons that motivated this decision, well, after being called to appear on multiple and various occasions, Kwa has not complied with the summons made to him to this day by the transitional justice system.
There is a key point to this news, and it is that reluctance to attend the summons, as Jefferson was saying. And according to the magistrate reading this resolution, it represents a flagrant breach and a hard blow to those who were his victims, the victims of those criminal actions considered crimes against humanity. Taking into account his position within the FARC, he is considered by the country as one of those most responsible for the crimes against humanity committed by the group.
The key point of this news is that even though the rights of his victims have not been satisfied at this moment, the JEP stated that alias El Paisa will continue receiving the main legal benefits granted by the peace agreement. What does this mean, Claudia? That those sentences and those 28 judicial proceedings he currently has in the ordinary justice system for crimes such as terrorism, extortion, displacement, forced disappearances, violent sexual assault, and kidnapping will remain suspended.
Look at the figure. 128 judicial proceedings in the ordinary justice system for, as you said, homicide of a protected person, violent sexual assault, forced displacement, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit a crime. The 10 convictions you mentioned for homicide and the 27 for kidnapping. Today, we have invited 3 victims of alias El Paisa. They directly and their families suffered the criminal actions of this man belonging to the FARC, leaving marks in many of their cases that are irreparable because murders are involved, leaving very sad and very harsh circumstances. Despite that, they have fought their whole lives. And here with us is Jimena Ochoa, who's also a co-founder of the Colombian Federation of FARC Victims. Her mother was kidnapped by alias El Paisa on December 16, 1990. And also with us is Jaime Felipe Lozada, a Colombian congressman representative to the House for the Department of Huila, also a victim of alias El Paisa. In very harsh circumstances that the country learned about, his whole family affected, his mother kidnapped for 7 years, his father murdered. You also a witness to that murder. I mean, very harsh circumstances. I want to start today by asking you as victims, are you paying attention and following the minute-by-minute updates of what is happening today at the JEP? As victims, do you feel that the JEP is somehow beginning to center the victims with these breaches, as the GP has already determined regarding alias El Paisa, or is it not enough? For you, Jimena.
For me, well, it is something to celebrate that they issued an arrest warrant, but I ask myself, an arrest warrant for what? For what? Why does he have the right to keep the benefits? That should not be the case, should it? If they are going to capture him just to pat him on the back and let him out again, well, we aren't accomplishing anything. I think what's happening is that the GP is gambling with its legitimacy and acceptance, and they're in a real bind and want to throw us a bone. This has no real substance.
So for you, this arrest warrant makes no sense at this moment. Ayabant. And for you, Hemi?
I totally agree with my fellow countrywoman and friend Jimena. This regrettable statement from the JEP, in my particular case, does not satisfy us in the slightest. We were expecting a concrete decision and a will expressed in that statement to expel El Paisa from that jurisdiction and to enable the prosecutor's office to pursue his capture, that is, for him to lose all the benefits that the special justice system has provided him, and for El Paisa to come, hopefully, to acknowledge his victims, but no longer through the special jurisdiction for peace, yet elent, rather under the oversight of ordinary justice, or at a given moment to enable our military and police forces to neutralize him, because what we cannot allow is for a criminal of this caliber to keep doing as he pleases throughout the country.
On this program, we also want to welcome Ángela Giraldo. She is the sister of Francisco Javier Giraldo, a deputy from Valle del Cauca. You also remember the massive FARC kidnapping of the Valle del Cauca deputies who were subsequently murdered. She also becomes a victim of alias El Paisa. According to the authorities, this criminal allegedly participated in the planning of the April 11, 2002 kidnapping and later the June 18, 2007 murder of the Val deputies. Ángela, welcome to the program, Noche. And regarding the situation that took place today at the JP, this decision by the JP to order the arrest of alias El Paisa, how do you receive it? Good evening, Claudia. And to everyone there, Jimena. Jaime, well, honestly for me, it is very positive that the JP is making the decision to capture alias El Paisa. We hope they act decisively, that they hand down sentences, which I imagine will now move to the investigation and accusation unit. He has not complied with the requirements of the special jurisdiction for peace, and what one would expect is for the JP to act coherently and allow ordinary justice to take charge of this case, since at this moment the whereabouts of alias El Paisa are not even known. That would be the fairest thing for the victims and for the country. Very well. The debate here also, Jefferson, is at what point are all the benefits lost when one should move to the ordinary justice system, as the victims say, and is the loss of all those benefits for when should it be reserved? That is to say, for breaches they consider more serious later on.
That's right, Claudia. The magistrate has delivered a rather controversial statement, and I think it is the one generating the most debate at this moment. And I want to ask Felipe, Jimena, and of course Ángela, who is joining us from the city of Cali, that the magistrate has asserted that stronger sanctions are reserved for more serious breaches. This suggests that not fulfilling obligations to the victims is not as serious as, for example, returning to arms. That was practically what the magistrate proposed. What do you think of that assessment the head is making right now? Does she give more importance to the laying down of arms than to failing to fulfill that postulate, than failing the victims? Well, I think it is important to clarify that El Paisa has been summoned 3 times to appear, and he has not attended, Jefferson and Claudia, any of those calls, that he has been given deadlines like a kindergarten child at school to send the reports established in the agreements, and he has not sent any report. What must be said clearly here is that El Paisa, after the signing of the agreement, has continued to commit crimes. Now, I want to address a specific topic at this table. In 2016, after the signing of the agreement, El Paisa ordered the murder of Ivan Soto, a fellow countryman of ours from the Huila department who lived in Valsillas, a farmer and horseman who was reporting that El Paisa was still committing crimes and extorting in that area.
Extorting. Yes, the reports.
And El Paisa had him murdered to silence him. And what has happened with that murder? Paisa at that time, because the area, sure, that was in 2016, yesterday. El Paisa had just arrived from Havana because, let's remember that he was taken to Havana as a request and demand from the guerrilla commanders and the SHU. And to return, upon returning, he goes to the concentration zone of Miravalle in San Vicente del Caguan, continues extorting this friend and fellow countryman Ivan Soto, reports those abuses. El Paisa orders him murdered. So if after the signing of the agreement, the GP says it is established that crimes are still being committed, that there is still murder and extortion, then the benefits are lost, I want to ask the JEP what it is waiting for to expel El Paisa. This is in the ordinary justice system, that investigation. Sure, it is in the ordinary justice system, but these were acts committed after the signing of the agreement. That is to say, he should lose the benefits that, as of today, with his non-appearance and lack of expulsion from the special jurisdiction for peace, that terrorist will still retain due to the laxity and benevolence of those magistrates. In fact, Claudia, the magistrate, also evaluated those intelligence reports from Magistrate Diaz for everyone in the special jurisdiction for peace. They made an assessment of some intelligence reports delivered by the Colombian military forces and said that it did not prove that at this moment El Paisa continued to commit crimes, and that for that reason he did not lose his benefits. What is your opinion, Jimena?
That is why it seems so serious to me that they do not exclude El Paisa from the benefits. The JIP is demonstrating that it does not care about the rights of the victims, and especially the right to non-repetition. Humberto Sanchez, mayor of San Vicente del Caguan, reported death threats from El Paisa.
That is correct.
And if that is not sufficient non-compliance to totally exclude him from the JEP, I do not understand what else could be. Furthermore, the JEP is contradicting and failing to uphold the Cologne Agreement because the rights of the victims come first, especially the right to non-repetition. Angela Giraldo, in Cali, we were told many times, I believe countless times, when there was criticism of the way the signing, the agreements, and the process were being carried out, that we should be calm as a society, that if the FARC failed to comply, they would lose all benefits, return to the ordinary justice system, and would not have benefits, nor would they be covered by those benefits. They always said it was in the agreement. Now, there are all these indications that El Paisa continued to commit crimes, but the JEP says it does not have the evidence, yet he cannot return to the ordinary justice system either. So how do you, as victims, really position yourselves and feel in terms of importance regarding the JEP elite? Because we feel, and you will tell us if you also feel this way as a victim, that we see it or analyze it as a JEP that is very indulgent toward the perpetrator. Yes, I believe the JEP has shown so far that it is very lenient with the perpetrators and has forgotten about the victims. Yes, we are waiting for the JP to take strong decisions, and it has been repeatedly demonstrated here that El Paisa does not want to be part of or contribute to this peace agreement. So I don't understand why they are so lenient with this issue. I know there are some processes they must follow. I understand that the investigation and prosecution unit also exists and that it must be transferred to them so they can forward it to the ordinary justice system. But this shouldn't be a long process. This should be something immediate, because for there to be justice, it needs to be immediate. In this way, we also feel that the commitments made at the signing of the agreement are being fulfilled in this peace process. Otherwise, we don't see how the JP can be legitimized, because
all these doubts and all these tangles between the different instances they have created only generate distrust in the process, and this generates instability for the victims who we feel have no justice, no truth, no reparation, and much less guarantees of non-repetition. How do you feel, the same question I asked Angela, how do you feel, let's say, regarding the GEP's actions, given that the GEP is so accommodating? That is to say, we even heard the delegated attorney general, the attorney generals, say, look, the intelligence reports, as Jefferson was saying, well, they don't really convince us that El Paisa continues to commit crimes. Well, that is what there is. Those are the proofs. Intelligence reports have always been evidence. What evidence would then be necessary for the GEP to focus now more on the victims than on giving guarantees to that perpetrator?
Well, I think the GEP magistrates want El Paisa to post a tweet or make a video saying he is going to go to Bogota or Neiva, or that he is going to go to Congress or the Palace of Justice with a briefcase containing an explosive device and blow it up. Or I think the JEP magistrates are waiting for El Paisa to come to Bogota and record himself in a video in flagrante delicto murdering dozens and hundreds of people to finally have a valid and accurate element of judgment to expel him from said jurisdiction so that he loses his benefits. That, honorable magistrates, forgive me for saying so, is not going to happen here. El Paisa, even if you don't want to believe it, continues to commit crimes. Maybe not here in Bogota, but certainly in the regions in Huila, in Caqueta, in Meta. Yes, they continue extorting. Yes, they continue murdering Colombians. Yes. It is time for you to make a decision in favor of the victims, to recognize us as such and move, to expel them from the country and therefore strip them of their benefits. Do not be, I say this with respect, naive. We are dealing with a criminal of a caliber like no other. Claudia, Jefferson El Paisa makes Garavito look like a novice. El Paisa was one of the greatest rapists in the ranks of the FARC. El Paisa makes Carlos Castaño, Yohe, and Tiro Fijo look like novices. He is the commander of the FARC Special Forces, and the JEP acts as if it were dealing with a charitable nun or a kindergarten child. For God's sake.
I do not believe in naivete, because when we victims say that the role of the Attorney General's office in the investigation must be preserved, they tell us, no, we have an investigation and analysis unit. And when evidence from military intelligence arrives, then that investigation and analysis unit doesn't appear, because if they want to refute my evidence, they have to refute it with another report from the investigation and analysis unit. They cannot just discard it for no reason.
So I am also seeing that the problem here is procedural. That is, the procedures are complex, they are difficult within the JEP itself, and they are not clear to anyone. The ordinary justice system cannot act at this moment because the country is under the special jurisdiction. And one must also understand that for a magistrate to make a decision, they must have conclusive evidence, but if they do not have that cooperation from the ordinary justice system, how can they?
I would say that the presidents...
No, it's not because the ordinary justice system doesn't want to, but because of how complicated the procedure itself is, and because of that extreme division that remained after the agreement, which ended up being processed in Congress via fast track as the prevalence of that justice over the ordinary one. They created a division of justice instead of a cooperation of justice.
The thing is, in a rule of law, the prosecutor's office is the voice of the victims. Why did they have to exclude the investigative work of the Attorney General's office? That was absurd, and it is a mistake we're going to pay for. But beyond that, I think the JEP is playing with very complicated things, and the fact is that we victims are not going to stop, and if we have to go to international bodies, we will go. We will not be deceived. The thing is, delayed justice is not justice. Justice when it's too late, what for? My mom is 82 years old. She hasn't been able to return to her farm, which is what she longs for, because of the permanent threat from El Paisa. But what then? Do we wait 5 more years?
After having suffered the kidnapping.
After having suffered what she has suffered, do we wait 5 more years for the procedure to allow the magistrates to make a decision? No, we are not going to wait for that.
Yes, I think, Claudia, that the procedures of the special jurisdiction for peace are too accommodating to the perpetrators. And if we want to understand here, and that's what we were led to believe, to try to understand when the signing at the Teatro Colón and the endorsement and so on, that we victims were going to be the center of the agreement, well, I think the country must understand and is understanding that with the actions of the special jurisdiction for peace, as you said, Jimena, it seems we victims are relegated to the background. And the center of the agreement is to see how we wash and excuse the guilt of the perpetrators. That is why this decision regarding El Paisa, as Jimena says, and I totally agree with her, is a transcendental decision for the special jurisdiction for peace. The special jurisdiction for peace is risking its life and credibility with this decision, because if El Paisa is not excluded, it will send a message of guarantee and support for the perpetrators and of total abandonment for us victims. Angela Giraldo in Cali, what is your opinion on this point raised by Jaime? Amy, do you believe that with this decision made by the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, the principle of victim centrality that was promised at the time the peace agreement was negotiated and signed is being fulfilled?
Well, what I think is that everyone focused, the negotiations were focused on demobilizing the FARC. That was like the central point. I supported the peace agreement because I wanted what we lived through to never be repeated and for no other family to experience a political kidnapping. That was my interest, and that is why I supported the peace agreement. But what I feel right now is that they are so afraid that the FARC will rearm that they feel intimidated by that position, and I feel they are not acting freely and are giving in just as the national government gave in to everything the FARC demands. I believe that if we want there to be peace in Colombia, it must be done on the basis of justice, because otherwise there cannot be reconciliation in the country. So I totally agree with what Jaime Felipe says. If the JEP does not make forceful decisions and does not assert itself as a justice system and gain credibility, what it will do is delegitimize itself. So we expect the JEP's decisions to be forceful and consistent and not to drag out an issue where the country has repeatedly made it clear that he is not interested in contributing to this peace agreement. Consequently, he must lose his benefits, and they cannot allow people to continue being exposed to what he is causing, to all his threats, and to all the terrorism he continues to commit against the country. They carried out countless military operations to capture him, and at this moment, they cannot delay any further for him to continue committing these acts of terrorism. I think it is important for the JEP to make decisions right now, to be strong, and not to feel fear. The guerrillas have been appearing before the JEP, the former commanders, the members of the FARC Secretariat, and they have never said that they have conditions of a lack of security measures. So we do not understand how alias El Paisa says that he has no security guarantees, while the General Staff and the FARC Secretariat have gone to give their statements before the JEP. These are excuses that are not valid, and that is why we demand that the JEP be forceful and take firm decisions. Yes, furthermore, you touched on a very important point that we will continue to analyze, which are all those excuses that El Paisa gave, which fortunately we see the JP did not believe, but all those excuses regarding his security and that he was being pursued by army squadrons and members and overflights, which fortunately we saw Magistrate Catalina Diaz dismissing that, and we will get to that topic. Is that at this moment we want to perform an exercise here on the program La Noche. Societies that have their memory alive are societies that learn from mistakes and overcome those mistakes. And keeping the memory alive also means never losing hope for the future. as long as that memory also serves the cause of justice and knowing the truth. That is why it is so important to remember, and we say it here, there may be young people at this moment who, when they were very small or when they were born or hadn't even been born yet, terrible crimes were committed that we as journalists traveling across the country had to go and witness. You experienced it as direct victims because you lost family members and were victims of crimes against humanity. As journalists, in my case, I suffered threats, but I didn't lose anyone close to me. But surely many of those young viewers don't even remember why Angela or why Jimena or why Jaime are sitting here today talking about this and talking about the country. So let's remember. I want to start with the Lozada family, with you, Jaime Felipe, because we are going back to that year, 2001, July 26, 2001, when there was a mass kidnapping at the Miraflores building in Neiva. Men from the FARC arrived and kidnapped many people from that building. There, the Lozada Polanco family, originally from Huila, suffered one of those most terrible infamies ordered by alias El Paisa. The entire family was a victim of kidnapping and murder. The mother, Gloria Polanco, was taken out of the Miraflores building in the city of Neiva along with her 2 sons, and they were kidnapped. Imagine what it is like for a mother to be taken with her 2 children. Later, her husband, Jaime Lozada, was murdered, and you survived that attack. Let's look back at it.
The misfortune of the Lozada Polanco family at the hands of alias El Paisa began 18 years ago, in 2001. To their apartment in the Miraflores building in Neiva came 100 guerrillas from the FARC's Teofilo Forero column, commanded by El Paisa, and they kidnapped Gloria Polanco and her 2 sons, Jaime Felipe and Juan Sebastian, who were still almost children. That day, the FARC also took 12 other people. Gloria's young sons were separated from their mother in captivity and suffered the torture of kidnapping for 3 years.
But they came and brought me here and left my 2 sons far away.
Before Mano Jojoy, Gloria begged for mercy for her family, I ask you, please, give me an appointment and tell me about my children.
I don't want anything else.
The sons were released through a millionaire payment to the FARC,
So that he might have pity on us and get us out of this is...
However, she spent 7 years kidnapped.
She was dead while alive.
And was only set free when Hugo Chavez intervened. She arrived in Caracas in 2008 along with 3 other hostages.
Venezuela.
But when she returned to freedom, she was already a widow and her children were fatherless. And 2 years earlier, her husband, former Congressman Jaime Lozada, had been murdered with explosives and rifle fire by guerrillas under the command of El Paisa, who attacked his vehicle on a highway in Huila. At that moment, their son, Jaime Felipe, was wounded. In addition to having spent 3 years kidnapped, he now had to witness with horror the murder of his father, another atrocity by the FARC against this family. We cannot allow a bandit, a terrorist of this caliber, to have the opportunity to continue committing crimes, to continue kidnapping, to continue murdering, to continue displacing people, and much less to continue maintaining drug trafficking routes. Gloria Polanco lost her husband, who was murdered by the FARC, endured 7 years in captivity, and suffered through the kidnapping of her children. Last year, she appeared before the GEP as a victim to recount her immense suffering. If hell exists, I have been beyond it.
Well, Claudia, this is the sad tragedy that the Polanco family lived through.
We also want to remember at this moment, as you correctly stated, Claudia, what happened on April 11, 2002. Who was there in Cali? That day, the FARC, under a command or with an armed unit led by the alias El Paisa, kidnapped the 12 deputies from Valle. This was on April 11, 2002. They were held hostage for nearly 5 years, more than 5 years. In 2007, they were riddled with bullets. They were executed also by orders of the FARC. We also want to remember today the tragedy experienced by the families of these 12 deputies from Valle. Only one returned to freedom. Yes, Sigfredo Lopez. Of course.
April 11, 2002. This phrase marked the tortuous path to death for 11 deputies from Valle. The criminal organization of the FARC had kidnapped half of those who made up the Departmental Assembly of Valle. It It was 10 in the morning and the FARC terrorists achieved their criminal objective without any casualties for their group and in the heart of the city of Cali.
Calm down, calm down, calm.
They posed as soldiers. They said that the FARC had placed a bomb in the building and another one very close by. At the governor's office, they gave the order to evacuate. The deputies, facing the scale of the news, exited through a basement door. They got onto a bus that had no idea it was driven by their executioners.
There is a bomb in the facility.
A week before the kidnapping, at a camp 2 hours from downtown Cali, the terrorists rehearsed every single point of their macabre plan.
No one here is going to act in any way.
The FARC sought to kidnap these and other high-ranking Colombian government officials to pressure then-President Andrés Pastrana into a humanitarian agreement and exchange military personnel, civilians, and politicians for imprisoned terrorists. President of the Congress of the Republic of Colombia. With the arrival of Álvaro Uribe Vélez to the presidency and the first proofs of survival, the families of the kidnapped saw a glimmer of hope to continue fighting for a better Colombia. 5 years passed and the FARC never handed over the keys to freedom. In June 2007, through a statement, the criminal organization announced that on the 18th of that same month, 11 of the 12 kidnapped deputies died, according to them, as a result of crossfire with an unidentified military group. In November of that same year, the prosecutor's office determined that the legislators were murdered with gunshot wounds to the back just after they had bathed. However, the whole truth about the death of the political leaders of Valle del Cauca would be known a year later, thanks to information gathered from the computers of alias Raúl Reyes, a terrorist killed in Ecuadorian territory by the Colombian army. The authorities discovered several emails showing how members of the FARC secretariat tried to hide the truth about the event. The governorate terrorists are directed against this sector.
The only survivor of that nightmare was Sigifredo Lopez, who regained his freedom 2 years later, on February 5, 2009.
Angela, so many days, so many nights, so many pleas. Well, we have all that history here as well on the program La Noche. How many conversations we had in that permanent request, in that plea for the liberation of the deputies, and that is why we say it. The people invited today are not being capricious in demanding things from the GAEEP. They are victims who want justice and who want the truth, and they even accepted, well, an agreement that, although it might not have fully met all expectations, was still the agreement. And now what we are seeing is that even with what exists, it remains even less. Jimena, in your case, I do want to highlight that alias El Paisa had been committing these crimes in his homeland since the 90s. Your mother was kidnapped in 1990, right? How long was your mother held captive?
No, my mom was there for about 4 months, but let's say the Huila tragedy isn't limited just to my family. I've spent half my life living in the terror caused by El Paisa, because it wasn't just my family, it was my friends, my neighbors, my colleagues, my fellow countrymen.
Your family? 9 kidnappings in your family?
9. Yes. A great uncle of mine was kidnapped 3 times.
They kidnapped his daughter, her husband, and his grandson.
Takwa, it was an atmosphere of terror that isn't just, let's say, what directly affects one's own family. I had an excellent friend, my mentor in cattle farming, Don Mariano Sanchez, a man who lived basically alone with 2 very elderly sisters. They murdered him, they kidnapped him, they murdered him, and to this day, no one asks about him, and there are many like him. There are thousands of victims who have come to tell me their stories, and it's not just mine, and the guarantee we need is that El Paisa be somewhere. He can't harm us.
We're going to take a short commercial break, Jefferson, and when we return, we'll continue talking with these 13 victims whose families have been victimized and who represent so many thousands of the victims of El Paisa and the FARC And we are going to give you the document in which Magistrate Catalina Diaz decides, obviously reading the resolution of the chamber that represents the GP, that for El Paisa, there should be an arrest warrant, but he must remain under the jurisdiction of the special jurisdiction for peace.
That is the decision the special jurisdiction for peace has made.
Let's take a break.
I invite you to participate in La Noche via our Twitter account, sharing your opinions on this decision, which has also sparked controversy because while it is true that it orders the arrest of alias El Paisa, it also maintains his benefits, keeping suspended those arrest warrants and sentences from the ordinary justice system for the victims of alias El Paisa. With us is Jaime Lozada, also Angela Giraldo from the city of Cali, and of course Jimena Ochoa, who is one of the victims who, for over 30 years, along with her family, began to suffer the threats made by El Paisa, kidnappings, extortion, robberies at the hands of the FARC, a series of persecutions that her family was a victim of. As you were saying, Claudia, all her siblings were persecuted by that criminal group. Let's see what her story is and remember the tragedy that each of her family members faced.
The life of historian Jimena Ochoa has been marked by the violence of the FARC.
The first chapter of this painful journey was in 1989 when the 13th Front of the FARC arrived at her family's cattle ranch. Her mother, businesswoman Selmira Sanchez, was kidnapped. Her captivity lasted 2 years and she only regained her freedom after a large sum was paid. They struck us our most precious asset, which is our peace of mind. In October 2014, Jimena was one of the victims who met with the delegates of this guerrilla group in Havana. There, facing the perpetrators, she vehemently expressed her point of view.
But we've arrived here. How many years after that? And we realize that none of it is real, that nothing is coming to fruition.
Violence struck the Ochoa family again in April 2017. Her brother Luis Terrado, a renowned human rights defender and political leader from Huila, was murdered in Pitalito. The crime is under investigation.
Well, there is the summary of the tragedy of each of the families of our guests tonight. Now let's return to the hearing today at the GP. Magistrate Catalina Diaz Gomez explained exactly what the decision was, or rather with great precision what the decision regarding the arrest warrant against alias El Paisa was. But why is this special jurisdiction maintained? This is what the magistrate said.
Due to his failure to comply with the obligations acquired with the jurisdiction, this chamber has previously indicated that under the criteria of graduality, the benefit of freedom must be revoked, and instead, the attendee must comply with a measure involving the deprivation of liberty. The chamber has mentioned that within the framework of the graduality of sanctions for non-compliance, in the present case, there were no reasons to apply the maximum sanction associated with expulsion from the system. Consequently, the legal situation of Mr. Velásquez Aldariaga must continue to be analyzed within the rules that govern the actions of the special jurisdiction for peace and ordinary. Judicial authorities do not have the jurisdiction to decide on the freedom of attendees to whom said rules apply.
Ordinary justice does not have the authority to order these arrests. She makes it very clear. Jefferson, the magistrate, just said it as well. She is ordering the national police to carry out the capture of El Paisa, and it will be a quite difficult situation, but they also request, or announce they will request, that Interpol issue a circular to be able to capture him if he is in other countries. Intelligence reports have also indicated that El Paisa may be in Venezuelan territory, Jaime. So there is a, let's say, greater difficulty there.
Yes, I agree. I am convinced that El Paisa is in Venezuela. That he unfortunately managed to cross the border. That JEP gave him so much time and so many deadlines that he had the chance to leave not only the Miraval territorial space, but to move to the border with the neighboring country. And of course, we all know that from Venezuela, he will continue sleeping the sleep of the righteous while we, the victims, wait for justice to be served and for him to face the country.
Unfortunately, I do not see how this decision by the Special Jurisdiction for Peace
will force El Paisa to come and appear and come to acknowledge the victims. I think a statement with the opposite decision, that is, expelling him from said jurisdiction, would have given the prosecutor's office and the military forces the possibility to act differently. And then El Paisa, whether in Venezuelan territory or Colombian territory, would be quite scared of the actions of our police and military forces today. But with this statement from the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, I think El Paisa, as he has done in previous cases, must be listening to music and drinking whiskey, happy with the actions that, unfortunately, the Special Jurisdiction for Peace has taken.
Jimena, what were those truths that you would have liked to hear from El Paisa and that you did not manage to hear?
During all that time on those two occasions when he was summoned before the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, and he did not appear.
But he did not appear, and he's not going to appear, and today's decision is just a symbolic gesture.
What would I have liked to hear? I would have liked to hear what the economic structure was like behind the military structure they set up to subdue the regions in which we lived through all this, because to maintain all that, they had a very large economic structure, and it is the bosses, those who manage the illicit funds, who are obligated to help us dismantle that criminal structure of illicit funds. That is what I would have liked. That is a truth we hope will be known one day, because I believe the country deserves to know that entire structure that obviously supported so many years of barbaric consequences that still persist. And it still has. Ángela Giraldo, sister of Francisco Javier Giraldo, a deputy from Valle del Cauca, kidnapped and murdered by the FARC. At the beginning of the program, Ángela, you seemed, let's say, more optimistic in the sense that you did think this was one more step. Meaning, at least the JEP is now saying this gentleman is non-compliant, he loses one of his benefits. One of those benefits, well, is the benefit of freedom. Ura. We are going to revoke his benefit of freedom. We are ordering his capture. The thing is, well, there are these difficulties. A lot of time has already passed. The most likely thing is that he, as military sources say, has crossed into Venezuelan territory. The political circumstances in Venezuela, of course, will not be conducive to cooperating with Colombian justice. But to continue in that spirit, let's say, much more optimistic, what does this step mean for you in practice? Or do you think that dream of knowing the truth that the country needs to hear will just stay there? Diluted by all these political circumstances. Well, it is regrettable what has happened, and it is regrettable that the whereabouts of El Paisa are unknown, and that this is due to the laxity with which the JP handled his specific case. Regarding the truth, I think there is still much to be told. Pablo Catatumbo, in the act of acknowledging responsibilities, committed to telling the whole truth, the detailed, exhaustive truth about what happened in the case of the Valle del Cauca deputies. I think there are many things we don't know, such as who the informants were. They had the blueprints of the Valle del Cauca Assembly. They had all the information from the deputies, schedules, journals. There are many infiltrated people we don't know who are going unnoticed. I really would like to know who they are, for them to also tell the whole truth. And as Jimenez says, we need to know these financial structures, because it was many years of terrorism, and these are the guarantees of non-repetition. If we can know how they were organized, who their collaborators, their militiamen, and the informants they had were, surely in Colombia there will be no repetition of these acts of violence that we have experienced. And it is regrettable that the new generations, as you were saying, do not know the horrific events caused by the FARC and all the suffering they generated. The matter of the deputies was 17 years ago. Jaime Felipez was 18 years ago. Meaning that their children and today's 17 and 18-year-olds did not live through this and do not know what we endured. It is important to maintain memory so that this does not happen again, and that is why we want the guerrillas committed to this agreement to tell the whole truth. It is unfortunate that El Paisa is not here, but I believe the full rigor of the law must be applied to him. We can no longer be lenient with him, and what we expect is justice. That from now on, the next steps of the JEP should be to summon for hearings those who were leaders and criminals of the FARC who are now demobilized, who have signed and stated they want peace, that they really begin to tell, all of them begin to tell the truth. Hopefully it will be so. And well, that is also our duty as society to demand it. Angela Giraldo, sister of Francisco Javier Giraldo, thank you for joining us from Cali. Thank you very much, Claudia. We must continue insisting on this. I believe the FARC themselves would not allow paramilitaries to be in the Congress of the Republic today, and yet, unfortunately, the people most responsible for crimes against humanity are in the Congress of the Republic. So we ask that in the same way they point fingers at others, they also point them at themselves and think about whether they truly should remain in those seats right now, because we feel that in that sense, an injustice is being committed. Jimena Ochoa, thank you also for coming to the program.
Thank you, and I want to point out that the security and the lives of the victims who dare to denounce El Paisa are the responsibility of the magistrates who have let him go free.
Jaime Felipe Losate, thank you for being here in this conversation.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure. Jefferson. Thank you very much, and to my dear friend and fellow countrywoman as well. Thank you very much.
Claudia, we have reached the final part, a very special program today, and we will continue to monitor what happens next in the special jurisdiction for peace. Ilif?
Yes. And we invite all our viewers to send their comments to www.ntn24.com, to Twitter at ntn24, at Sigrise at ntn24, at JeffersonNT224, at LanchNT. As always, the night will continue to turn on the lights so that you see the key point of the news. Good evening.